Hello everyone, Late here. In today's video I want to talk about low life practice fire, and this setup is basically a mini version of Captain Land's Giga Ref, and the goal is to make the setup cheap enough so it's viable around like day 2 or day 3 on the league starts. The POB will be in the descriptions and I'll go over the setup real quick. So we are using Ivory Towers and Shepherd Touch. This is pretty standard for this kind of setup. Sacropian Coil, the idea is like we have a lot of life, we have a lot of strength and intelligence. Preserving your life will give you a lot of ES, and Shepherd Touch give 1% ES per 10 strength. It also give 1 life per dexterity, and so on and so forth. And Cyclopean Coil, this item will give attribute and maximum life, but the most important part is it going to give cannot be shocked if your intelligence is stronger than strength. And since our strength is also higher than the dexterity, we also cannot be ignited. So we have immunity against shock and ignite, which in my opinion is 2 of the most dangerous elemental elements. And for the boots, I'm using Legacy of Fury. You can use rare boots on this one, but Legacy of Fury does give quite a lot of DPS, so that's the reason why I'm using Legacy of Fury. And for the shield, I'm using Rise of Phoenix. This is because it gives maximum fire resistance, it gives a lot of fire resistance, and it also gives a lot of regen. So there is another options where you can use several frames, and the benefit for several frame is it gives the maximum resistance not just to fire but also cold and lightning, and the second one it also help with elemental resistance, which in this setup we are actually have problem with elemental resistance. I barely kept the resistance. If you see on the defense, I have to keep my resistance using flash. So I'm going to talk about the flash in a minute. The next one, let's move on to the helmet. I'm using Crown of Inward Eyes. This is just for the maximum life, mana, and global shields. I mean, the mana doesn't really matter, we're not using mana, but the life energy shield is pretty nice. And for the rings, I'm using Shaft and Revelations. This is give us 6% energy shields per second. They cannot regen mana, it doesn't really matter because, like I said, we're not using mana. But the most important part is you have to place this ring on the right slot. And the other ring is Amethyst ring with, I craft this. I'm looking for cold resistant fracture, and I basically spamming Essence of Rage for strength until I get 1 intelligence, and in the prefix I just craft life and move on. And for the amulet, looking for fracture maximum energy shields, and I do reforge chaos until I get chaos resistance and lightning resistance. I mean, in this one I happen to have intelligence, so that's kind of nice, but it doesn't really have to have the intelligence. The most important part is the lightning resistance and chaos resistance. The lightning resistance can be any resistance. You can switch resistance using harvest. And for the prefix, just craft life and move on. So I think this one is pretty easy to do. And the annoying one is melting, and melting is also pretty easy to anoint. I think to anoint melting you need opalescence, violet, and sapphire oil. And for the scepter, I'm looking for increased burning damage because dot multi and fire dot multi fracture is really expensive. So this is, since this is budget setup, I want it to be cheap and easy to craft, so I look for a fracture burning damage, and I'm spamming Essence of Fear. That will guarantee the minion deal increased damage, and I'm looking for either damage over times multiplier on suffix or fire damage over time multiplier on suffix. And if you have open prefix, you can craft increased damage over time like this one. And that's about the items. And for the flask, I'm using Bismuth, Coruscating Elixir, and Quicksilver. The Coruscating Elixir is mandatory. You cannot run this setup without this because we do not have a lot of life. If we only have 194. So if the chaos bypass the energy shield and it hit you, you will definitely die. So the way to mitigate that is using Coruscating Elixir. This flask make chaos damage taken to not bypass your energy shield. And how we keep the flask on is basically using the craft reuse at the end of the flask, and we pair them with Traitor Keystone. So this will give 4 charges for every empty slot for 5 seconds, and in mapping scenario you will always have this up. So for the next one, let's talk about the Ascendancy. Number 1, I'm using Occultists and Guardians. The reason for that, Guardians give a lot of regens, 3% for each aura, and every 4 seconds it regenerates 50% life over a second, and this is a very huge regens. Occultist is because these have the highest DPS because of the additional curses. So I'm using Flammability, and I'm using Elemental Weakness. So for the Occultist, this also gives some regen. 1.5 is not too big, but is a decent amount. And also I'm using Forbidden Jewel, and let me refund this so you can see it. I'm using Inquisitor because it gives some damage, and it's also have a chance to spawn a consecrated ground whenever you hit enemy. And the way we hit, I'm using this setup with cast when damage taken, wave of convictions, and combustion support. So the wave of convictions will apply exposure, and because of the combustions, it will also lower the fire resistance of the enemy. Now, this is not very consistent way to generate consecrated grounds, but it's a cheap way to do it, because the other way to do it is using rational doctrines. I just don't know how how much that jewel will cost on the league start scenario. So I'm using Inquisitor because of that reasons. You can do something else like Chieftain is pretty nice. It gives 10% strength. Unaffected by ignite does not really matters, but the cover enemy in Ashes does give quite a lot of DPS, but it's also relying on hit. But this one is 20%, so this one is more constant. But I prefer to have more regens, and I think in this setup without the consecrated ground, the net regen basically just means your regen minus the damage from Righteous Fire is around 3.1 or 3.2k, and with this regen on, I think it's around 4k. For me, that's a decent enough regens to keep us alive. So that's for the Ascendancy. And the other way you can do it also, you can take Pathfinder, and this is if you do not want to use Trader Keystone, but I would suggest to use this one early on, just because number one, it make it a lot easier, because Pathfinder Forbidden Jewel, as I remember, is pretty expensive, and it also help with dexterity. So if you do not want to use something like, I don't know, Occultist or Guardian, then you need to path over here. This will help with your dexterity, because we do need 111 dexterity. We are barely there, and that's about the Ascendancy. And for the tree itself, it's pretty self-explanatory. It's pretty straightforward. A lot of life, a lot of regens. I take a lot of attributes. This is one strength, this one is in. One important note is the intelligence need to be bigger than strength, because of the Sacropian Coil that I explained earlier. It will grant us cannot be shocked. So having an immunity against shock is very important to the defense. So I test this setup with two mechanics in particular that I think is very rippy. Number one is expeditions. The only problem with expedition is you cannot use the Scarab of Archaeology, because it's adding 2 additional suffix and prefixes, and that makes the expedition a lot harder, like a lot harder. Another note about expedition is also you cannot really tank them, so I just kite them around because the AoE is also pretty nice. We have some AoE node on the tree, and that helps with kiting around, and because we also have a lot of regen, so some damage coming in, as long as it's not one-shotting you, you pretty much always able to recover back, and that makes the expedition doable even without that scarabs. And on my defense, expedition with a full set of scarabs, like, it's a very big content, even though you have a decent build with a decent gear. So able to do it, I think is good enough for me. And the second mechanic that I tried on is Harbinger and Beyond. This is also another mechanic that I think very rippy, and so far I'm happy with it. I mean, I cannot really tank them and just stand them around and just tank everything, because at this is a low budget setup. I don't think we can do it. I try to do it, something you survive, something you not, so it's not very stable, but like I said, you don't have to do that one. And since the mechanic able to do it, for me, this is more than good enough for like early league start. And later on, when you have like a bigger ES, like I think in the mid budget one, I have something like 25k ES, your defense will be a lot better. So I think that's all about the setup. I think I've explained everything. So if you guys want to try it, like I said, POP in the descriptions, you can play around with it. And we're just waiting for the patch note. I mean, the patch note is basically still like a month away, so there is quite a lot of time until then. And I want to explore other setup that can be used on the early league start, because I've been league starting like Scion Ranger for like two leagues straight already, so I want to try something new. So I think that's it about the video, and I will leave you with the showcase on the Minotaur, just to showcase the clear and the damage on the single target. And as anyone expected, the single target is not great. This is RF, is not known for a single target, but the clear is definitely good. So yeah, thank you everyone for watching, and if you like the video, consider like and subscribe. That will help the channel a lot, and I will see you in the next one.
sanity of the